Welcome to our deep dive into the world of music and the brain. You've given us so much to work with here, a huge stack of articles and studies. Look like we're going pretty deep with this one.
Yeah, it definitely seems like you're interested in going beyond just the basics of how music works. You want to know how it affects our brains, how it shapes the way we see the world, maybe even how it connects to the bigger picture of what it means to be human.
You got it. All right, so where should we start? We've got research on all sorts of fascinating stuff here. Musical hallucinations, the connection between music and language, how music and memory work together, the structure of music itself, and we even have some philosophical stuff about the nature of music.
A good place to start might be with this idea of musicophilia. You know, that feeling that you just have to listen to music,
Right.
that it's somehow a core part of being human.
Oh, yeah, definitely. For me, music always felt like it was speaking to something deep inside me. Is that just me, though? Or is it something more universal?
Well, the idea of musicophilia suggests that it's way more than just a personal quirk. It suggests that humans are just naturally drawn to music no matter what their background is or whether they've had any formal training. And what's really cool is that neuroscience is starting to show us the biology behind all of this. We're discovering that music activates a whole network of brain regions, including areas that deal with emotions, pleasure, and even movement.
Wow, so it's not just some vague feel-good thing. There's actual science to back it up.
Exactly. For instance, studies using fMRI have shown that when people listen to music that they enjoy, there's activity in the nucleus accumbens, a part of the brain associated with reward and pleasure. This suggests that music actually taps into the same brain circuits that light up when we experience other pleasurable things, like eating or sex.
Okay, wow, so our brains are actually wired to find music rewarding. No wonder we love it so much. But since we're talking about the brain and music, let's shift gears to this research on musical hallucinations. This case study about a man who started hearing music after having a stroke is both amazing and kind of creepy.
It definitely highlights how deeply music is woven into how our brains work. And what's particularly interesting about this case is that it makes us question our assumptions about reality. Here's a man who, after damage to specific parts of his brain, started experiencing vivid musical hallucinations. It's as if his brain was composing and playing music all on its own without any external sound coming in.
So he wasn't just misinterpreting sounds that were already there, his brain was actually creating the music.
That seems to be what was happening. And this suggests that the parts of our brain responsible for hearing and understanding music are so complex that they can function even without any outside input. It raises a pretty big question. How much of what we perceive as reality is actually being shaped by our brain's internal processes?
Whoa, now we're getting into some deep philosophical territory. But I can see how this case really makes you think about what perception is and how our brains create our experiences.
Exactly. And what's also interesting is that this case, along with other research, is helping us to pinpoint which areas of the brain are responsible for different parts of how we experience music. We know that the auditory cortex, which is in the temporal lobe, is essential for processing sound. But within the auditory cortex, there seem to be specialized areas that respond specifically to things like pitch, rhythm, and timbre.
So it's not like there's just one music center in the brain. It's more like a whole orchestra of different regions working together.
That's a great way to put it. And these regions don't work in isolation either. They're constantly communicating with each other and with other parts of the brain, like the areas that control emotions, the limbic system, memory, and movement. This complex interaction is what creates the rich and multifaceted experience we call music.
It really makes you appreciate how complex this whole process is. It's not just sound waves hitting our eardrums. It's this intricate dance between different parts of the brain, drawing on our emotions, memories, and even our physical reactions.
You're getting it. And this complexity becomes even clearer when we start looking at the relationship between music and language. There's more and more research coming out that suggests some intriguing parallels between how our brains process these two forms of communication, which seem so different on the surface.
Yeah, I've always wondered about that. Music and language feel really different, but there's just something about them that seems connected.
There is. For one, both music and language rely on sequences of sounds that are arranged over time. They both use things like repetition, variation, and patterns to convey meaning and create emotional responses. And here's the interesting part. Neuroimaging studies have shown that some of the same areas of the brain are activated when we process music and language.
Hold on, so my brain is using some of the same equipment to understand a symphony and to have a conversation.
It seems that way. For example, Broca's area, an area in the frontal lobe that we traditionally think of as being responsible for producing speech, is also involved in processing musical syntax. That's basically the rules that govern how musical phrases are put together. And Wernicke's area, another language center that's involved in comprehension, also seems to play a role in how we understand the meaning and emotions in music.
That's pretty mind-blowing. It's like there's this deep underlying connection between these two things that are so important for human communication.
Mm.
But if they're using some of the same pathways in the brain, does that mean they can influence each other? Like, could learning music make you better at language?
That's a question that researchers are really digging into, and the evidence is pretty compelling. For example, some studies have shown that children who learn music tend to do better on tasks that involve language, like reading comprehension, vocabulary, and even learning a new language.
So music is like a brain workout for language skills.
You could put it that way. It looks like learning music can actually boost the brain's ability to process complex sounds, to spot patterns, and to improve working memory. And these cognitive benefits can then carry over to other areas, including language.
I'm starting to see why you're so passionate about this. It's not just about how beautiful music is, it's also about its potential to help us develop new cognitive abilities and understand the brain in new ways.
Exactly. And speaking of unlocking abilities, let's talk about one of the most fascinating things about music: its power to evoke memories. Have you ever noticed how a certain song can instantly transport you back to a specific time and place, bringing back a flood of emotions and memories?
Oh yeah, all the time. Some songs are like total time machines. They take me right back to when I was a kid, or to my first love, to those specific moments of pure joy or even heartbreak. It's pretty wild how music can have that kind of power over our memories.
It really is. And the fascinating thing is that this link between music and memory isn't just some random thing people experience. There's a solid scientific explanation for it. See, music engages many different areas in the brain, including those responsible for emotions, forming memories, and how we perceive the world around us.
Okay, but how does that work exactly? What's happening in the brain that makes a song bring back a specific memory?
Well, one key part of this is the hippocampus. It's this seahorse-shaped structure deep in the brain. It's super important for making new memories. And the hippocampus is really sensitive to emotional experiences. And as we've already talked about, music can be incredibly emotional. So when you hear a song that was connected to a really emotional event in your past, the hippocampus helps to reactivate the neural pathways that were created when that memory was formed. It's like bringing that memory back to life.
So it's almost like music creates a shortcut to those stored memories, like a key that unlocks a specific door in our brain.
Exactly. And it's not just the hippocampus that's involved. The amygdala, another part of the limbic system that deals with emotions, plays a big role in linking music with specific feelings. That explains why certain songs can still bring back such strong emotions even years later. And then there's the prefrontal cortex, which is involved in those higher level thinking skills like making decisions, planning, and self-awareness. The prefrontal cortex helps us remember all the details and context that go with a memory, giving it that rich and detailed feeling.
It's amazing how all these different parts of the brain work together to create that experience of a musical memory. It's like a symphony of its own, with all the different instruments playing their parts. But actually, speaking of symphonies, I'm curious how all of this, the emotions, the memories, all the brain processing, relates to the actual structure of music. Is there something about the way music is composed that makes it so good at tapping into these brain processes?
That's a really great question, and it takes us into the world of music theory and the math behind music. You see, beneath what can seem like a spontaneous and emotional art form, there's a whole world of complex patterns, mathematical ratios, and structural principles. And what's really interesting is that these principles, which composers often use without even thinking about it, seem to perfectly match how our brains are wired.
I'll be honest, I'm not very musically inclined. I can barely even clap along to a beat. But the idea that there's this hidden mathematical structure within music is really intriguing.
It is. For centuries, philosophers and mathematicians have been fascinated by the presence of math in music. Take the golden ratio, for instance. It's this irrational number that's roughly 1.618. It appears all over in nature, in the spirals of seashells, the proportions of the human body. And you know what? The golden ratio also shows up in music. It's often found in the arrangement of different sections of a piece of music, the length of notes, and the balance between tension and resolution.
Wait, so this same mathematical ratio that's found in nature is also embedded in the music we create. Is that just a coincidence or is there something deeper going on?
Now, that's the question that has really puzzled thinkers for ages. Some people think it's evidence of a kind of universal harmony, a fundamental order that underlies both the natural world and the things humans create. Others suggest that it's more about how our brains perceive and process patterns. Our brains seem to be drawn to certain ratios and proportions. We just find them pleasing and beautiful.
It's like our brains are hardwired to appreciate these mathematical patterns, whether they're expressed in something like a sunflower or in a piece of music.
Exactly. Another mathematical concept that pops up in music is the Fibonacci sequence. In this sequence, each number is the sum of the two numbers before it, 0, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, and so on. We see the Fibonacci sequence in the way musical phrases are arranged, the number of beats in a measure, and even the intervals between notes. Again, this isn't just about randomly applying math to music. It seems to tap into something fundamental about how our brains perceive and organize patterns over time.
I'm starting to see how all of this fits together. Music isn't just about emotions and memories. It's also about math, structure, and these underlying patterns that resonate with our brains. It's like this secret code that unlocks something deep inside us.
That's such a great way to put it. And this leads us to that big fundamental question about music. What is it, really? Is it just organized sound, or is it something more? Is it like a universal language, or does it depend on culture?
Those are some big questions. Honestly, I've never really thought about music like that before. I just knew I liked it.
And that's a perfectly fine place to start. But as we've been exploring, music is much more than just personal taste. It's a window into how our minds work, a powerful tool for understanding our emotions, our memories, even the way we think.
I'm definitely seeing that now. It's like music is this amazing intersection of art, science, and philosophy. But before we get too caught up in the big picture, I want to circle back to something you mentioned earlier, the potential for music to be used in therapy. We've talked about how music can bring back memories, but how can it actually be used to help people who are dealing with specific conditions?
That's a great question, and it's an area where we're seeing some really incredible progress. Music therapy is no longer seen as some kind of fringe idea. It's becoming more and more accepted as a legitimate and effective way to help people with a wide range of physical and mental health issues.
I've heard about music therapy being used for things like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease. But how does that actually work? What's the science behind it?
Well, for Alzheimer's disease, which is a condition that affects memory and thinking skills, music therapy can use the power of music to bring back memories and emotions. This can even work for people who've lost the ability to communicate with words. As we talked about earlier, music can activate those dormant pathways in the brain, triggering memories and emotional responses that might be otherwise lost.
So even if someone with Alzheimer's can't remember their loved ones or things that happened recently, they can still connect with the emotions tied to a familiar song.
Exactly. It's a really powerful way for them to access and express emotions that might be locked away because of the disease. And this can have a huge impact on their mood, how they see themselves, and even how they interact with others.
That's amazing. It's like music provides a bridge to parts of the brain that we can't reach through other forms of communication. What about conditions like Parkinson's disease, which affects movement and coordination? How can music therapy help with that?
In Parkinson's disease, there's a disruption in the brain's dopamine system, which is essential for controlling movement. Music, with its inherent rhythm and timing, can help to stimulate and regulate those motor circuits in the brain. Music therapy techniques, like rhythmic auditory stimulation, where people walk or move to the beat of music, have shown really promising results. They can improve things like walking, balance, and coordination.
So the music acts like an external cue that helps synchronize and regulate their movements.
That's the idea. It's almost like a musical framework that supports and guides their motor system. And beyond these neurological conditions, music therapy is being used for a wide range of other issues too. Things like anxiety, depression, chronic pain, and even autism spectrum disorders.
It sounds like music therapy has almost unlimited potential. But how does someone actually become a music therapist? Is it a specialized field?
It is. Music therapy is a separate profession that requires specific training and certification. Music therapists are trained musicians who also have extra education and clinical experience in using music for therapeutic purposes. They work in all kinds of settings, including hospitals, clinics, schools, and private practice.
It sounds like a really rewarding career path,
Wow.
using music to truly make a difference in people's lives. You know, this whole deep dives has got me thinking about the even wider applications of what we're learning about music and the brain. If we can use music for therapy, can we also use it to learn more effectively, to become more creative, or even just to concentrate better at work? It's pretty amazing to think that something we enjoy so much could also be so useful. Could we use music to learn better, or to be more creative, or even just to focus better when we're working?
Definitely. There's actually a whole field of research that's looking into these very questions, and the findings are pretty exciting. For example, in education, we're seeing evidence that incorporating music into how we learn can actually improve brain function. It can help students remember things better and even boost their attention spans.
So it's more than just playing classical music in the background while you're studying.
Right. It's about actively engaging with music as a part of learning. Think about things like incorporating rhythmic exercises, melodic dictation, or even songwriting into different subjects. This not only makes learning more engaging, but also helps develop important cognitive skills that can be applied in other areas.
Yeah, I can see how that would make learning more fun and help you remember things better. What about in the workplace, though? Can music help us be more productive or more creative?
Absolutely. Research has actually shown that listening to certain types of music, like instrumental music or nature sounds, can help create a more focused and productive work environment. It can help block out distractions, reduce stress, and even boost cognitive performance.
So maybe not blasting heavy metal while you're trying to concentrate?
Well, it really depends on the person and the task at hand. Some people find that upbeat music helps them get through repetitive tasks, while others need something more calming to really focus on complex work. The important thing is to pay attention to how different types of music affect your concentration, your mood, and your energy levels.
So it's about finding the right soundtrack for your brain.
Precisely. It's a good idea to experiment with different genres, tempos, and sounds to see what works best for you in different situations. You might be surprised at how much music can actually influence your productivity, your creativity, and just your overall sense of well-being.
This whole deep dive has been a real eye-opener for me. I always loved music, but I never really understood how deeply it connects to our brains, our emotions, and even who we are as people.
It really is a fascinating phenomenon, and we've only just begun to explore all its possibilities.
It almost feels like music is this secret language that speaks to something really fundamental about being human. It connects us to our past, shapes our present, and even gives us a glimpse into the mysteries of our own minds.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And for everyone listening out there who's now as fascinated by this connection between music and the brain as we are, here's one last thought to consider. If music is so powerful that it can evoke strong emotions, boost our thinking abilities, and even promote healing, could it also be used to cultivate empathy, understanding, and connection between people? Could music be a key to building a more harmonious and compassionate world?
Wow, that's something to think about.